theater and start using them. And after that, how much will be still left? Are they producing more Tomahawk missiles? Do they have money to do that? They should, because they have $1 trillion budget. So unless they spend all this $1 trillion for caviar and champagne and lobsters dinners, so maybe still have left. So maybe they will produce more Tomahawk and they will use more Tomahawk. So what's the end game? The end game is Trump knew before the beginning of this war, which he started, he knew that he is going badly lose midterm election. So his way to deal with that would be to have a victorious war, a quick war, where he would become a winner, like in Venezuela, like elsewhere else. And maybe he will deal with Cuba, maybe Greenland, maybe Canada, maybe something else. Okay. So that way, that's the only way how Trump could not to lose badly. I don't think he will ever win, but at least not to lose badly, at least hold on to Senate on midterm election. Now that backfires badly. They will not lose midterm elections. They will be decimated. They will be a fraction of Republicans left in the House, and maybe a handful of Senate people. That's the end of story. And finally, the man who was a con artist all his life, who had several bankruptcies, who is a criminal, and American people so, well, okay, we'll give him a chance, or maybe he will be better than Biden anyway, or Kamala Harris, so let's give him a chance, we'll see how bad it is. No, you haven't seen it yet. It's coming. It's a payback time, baby. You wanted criminal in charge? You got it. Now you will pay.
All right, I got another question for David. Are we ever going to get jobs back? So last year of Biden, 2024, we only added 1.5 million jobs. Under Trump, we've added basically zero new. It looks like AI is chewing up jobs like Pac-Man. Like, are we ever going to get jobs back?
Yeah, I think it's a very good question. By the way, I just want to say, if you look at actually what happened during COVID, I mean, especially immediately after COVID, which is what we're talking about the last 2 years of the Biden administration, what was interesting was that immediately after COVID, guess what? We saw a massive, surge in the employment in the so-called hospitality and leisure industry. And that is restaurants, that is movie houses, that is Disney World, and so on and so forth. So Americans actually, obviously they were starved of services during COVID. So after COVID, they just went out to eat. They went, and also has a lot to do with Gen Z, that more interested in experience than actually acquiring stuff. And by the way, I don't tell you, leisure and hospitality industry is highly labor intensive. Okay. So I would argue that was the main reason, that was the main driver of what we saw in terms of the hiring spree in 2023 and 2024. Okay. 2025, suddenly, the Americans have gone to a restaurant too much. They were basically taking a chill. I don't know to what extent the slowdown that we saw in employment growth was because somehow, like Trump, whatever it is, I think it has something to do with the fact that, like restaurants, I finished hiring Americans that were, whatever, that the restaurant was not quite as basically a big deal as before. So far, all I can tell you is this. I mean, there's been a lot of very serious reports, trying to quantify the impact of AI on productivity growth, on employment. And so far, guess what? The evidence is practically none. There's very little evidence to suggest that AI has already led to big layoffs. That is outside the tech industry. There's no doubt. AI is taking jobs from software engineers. I mean, for example, I believe that at least 25% of software engineers in the United States are going to lose their job in the next 3 years. Software engineer, there are 4.4 million software engineers in the United States. So you're talking about 1 million software engineers probably are set to lose their jobs because of AI. But so far, the problem with AI is that outside software, outside the tech industry, AI hasn't been good enough. This is the reason why surveys after surveys show that most companies are very slow to adopt AI because they feel like it's not good enough. So I would say that this whole idea that AI is already like costing jobs, I'm not sure that's the case. And it might be a lot of companies are probably using AI as an excuse not to hire people. But I think for the most part, I don't think this is something that's obvious. I think rather that I don't think jobs are coming back, just so that you know for what it's worth. I mean, for one thing, the unemployment rate's very low, actually. And by the way, there's something else. If you're thinking about the total employment situation in the United States, probably the biggest difference between 2024 versus 2025 in terms of the number of jobs created is that obviously 2025, 2.5 million illegals were basically deported. So that means that these people lost their jobs. Okay, there were fewer people working in the U.S., partly because they were deported, or some of them left voluntarily. But that was a very big difference between the last year under Biden versus the first year under Trump, which is that under Biden, 2 million people came in. Under basically Trump, 3 million people were deported. That's a change of 5 million. And that probably, I don't know if that contributed to a 5 million change in jobs, but at least 1 million, 2 million, I'm sure that was the single biggest driver. So from that point of view, if you're an American, in other words, you're not illegal, the job market is better for you. I mean, of course, many Americans may not want to do the kind of job that the illegals were doing, but certainly if you want to work now, a lot of the in construction, leisure hours, if you want to basically wash dishes, there are plenty of those jobs around right now.
Right.
Yeah, thank you, David. How you analyze the whole things, I really like it. Thank you for your analyzing the whole point.
Thank you very much.
I just want to add 3 points. Number one, these technologies. I write a book on technocracies, and it's published with Innovative Academic Research Publishers from France. Secondly, I just want to discuss about this propaganda, and third, this investment. Right now, I'm in Bangladesh. We are observing from Bangladesh, and I'm doing work with the California Institute of Management. We are running climate leadership and strategic AI program, and we identified in these challenging situations why U.S. economy is declining and how they can work. Basically, if U.S. people, what you have a wisdom from your expertise, from your knowledge, Mr. David, and with your wisdom, if you apply this wisdom in industry, if you apply this wisdom for community development, if you apply this wisdom for politics, it can create more economic values. It create more jobs. It create more policy. It create more economical improvement. So we do advocacy for human wisdom. And wisdom comes from different nations. It's come from China, it's come from USA, it's come from Bangladesh. So we do want to focus on human wisdom, and we identify the people, those who more use technologies. If you are not smart when you're using technology, if you are using your smart, you are losing your wisdom, you are losing your capacity. That is one of the concern I have for the Western world. Second, propaganda. We need good media like Pot TV. If you see all of the Western media, like all of the big channel, because they do focus on their own agenda, their own propaganda, and all of the things. They do not invite Bangladeshi people to talk what's going on in South Asia. They never try to understand what's going on in South Asia because of this Iran and Israel war, or these other things. So we need genuine media, and I request everyone, you should invest this kind of media, those who are not focused on propaganda, those who have real people, real information, and real things. Third, investment. Look, if I see US economy, when Donald Trump he come up with the idea, he want to stop US aid, because US aid go for all of the unproductive investment. Secondly, he goes to cut all of the relationship around the world. He said, we do not want to invest. We want to protect ourselves. And what's going on right now? We are observing USA won $200 million for this war. First, he said they are utilizing money for unproductive purpose. Now they say they need $200 billion. What does $200 billion means? Even Bangladesh Pakistan, Nepal, their whole central bank money is not maybe around $40 billion. $200 billion is a very big money. So it's a American people money. It's a American taxpayer money. The politicians of American people, they are utilizing it for unproductive purpose. They can utilize it human capital development. They can utilize investing for the corporation or for SME. And through this process, we are actually losing a great leadership approach. I see there are a lot of smart people from North America, but lack of good leadership, they are in trouble. So my proposal, focus on uh, talent people, invite talent people in politics. You have all of the technology, all of the money, all of the things, all of the power, but if you do not have smart people in politics, you will lose everything. So these are the 3 points I find and I identified USA is losing right now. They
Yeah.
have to move it out.
I think you make a very good case. I think, I think on technology, I think it's been more complicated. I mean, I'll tell you what I think about, because I tend to focus on the geopolitics of technology. We all know that in, technology, there are two aspects of technology. One is who owns the technology, and two, who benefits from technology, right? Now, if you think about this, for example, I mean, forget about AI. Let's go back 20 years ago, during the whole dot-com bubble, right? The whole entire IT revolution came out of the United States for the most part, right? I mean, Microsoft, if you think about this Windows, Apple, like Word, all these things, okay, came out of the United States. Did the Americans benefit from that? Not that much. The rest of the world benefited in a very big way, by the way. Because what happened was, yeah, the US invented computers, but then computers became so cheap that you couldn't make money basically making computers anymore. But for someone like in Bangladesh, a child from a poor school, now all of a sudden, accessing a computer is not so far-fetched anymore. So there's no doubt technology that the US has created during the whole IT revolution benefited the world, lifted basically the average income around the world, and so on and so forth. But the US itself did not benefit so much, because in a way it sort of just got taken over, because I don't have to tell you, 99% of the Windows software, the Microsoft Office, so on and so forth, was pirated. Okay? In India, in China, and so on and so forth. So like the Americans invented this stuff, the rest of the world just basically took it and basically didn't pay. That's what Donald Trump is trying to fix right now. Now, we can sit here and argue whether you should be or do that. I mean, because it's just sort of like, if you remember the Greek myth about about Prometheus that stole fire from heaven to bring it to basically humanity, right? But the American business model now is very much about promoting, technology monopolies that control the technology. They're going to they become essentially the, if you can look at it this way, the chicken that lays the golden eggs. If you're talking about Microsoft, Google, Facebook, whatever, NVIDIA, and so on and so forth, these companies, they're now, like, you're just talking about whatever, 7 companies, so-called the Magnificent Seven, even though they only hire less than 1 million people, tops, actually, they now account for 20% of US GDP. So what I'm saying to you is that in a way, yes, you're absolutely right. I mean, and this is why China, that's why India, China, everybody is now understand that you want to benefit from technology, but you also want to control the technology. To control the technology, you have to leapfrog the US. And that's what this story is about. So from that point of view, technology is less now about how to basically make everybody better off, how to basically make the world better off. But it's now about how we actually going to control the technology, how we're going to monetize the technology, because as we all know, the US has gone bankrupt. The US government's gone bankrupt. This is the reason why they need every penny they can get from Microsoft, Google, NVIDIA, and so on and so forth. This is why the whole entire US model depends on its ability to milk the cows. And the cows are these technology companies. And this is the reason why this administration is much more defensive. They're trying to ring fence the entire tech sector. This is why the the partnership between this administration and Silicon Valley is something we have not seen in U.S. history in the last 50 years. Yes. I mean, Kimberly, you had a question. I mean,
Well, I'll let Rick, because I've just popped in late, but it's a pleasure to see you, and I'm glad that we see you today.
You've gone through some very sophisticated geopolitical reasoning, but then you look at Trump and the people around him, and Trump doesn't seem very sophisticated. Is he really aware of what he's doing, or is it the billionaires who are working through him?
Rick, I mean, listen, I don't want to say anything I'm going to regret afterwards. I mean,
Okay.
I don't have any axe to grind. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I told you, I was born in the U.S. I grew up in Taiwan. I was educated in the U.S. I grew up in Europe, and then I now live in Israel. Donald Trump, for me, I think he's definitely a very talented guy. And by the way, I should tell you this: I did have the pleasure of meeting Trump a couple of times in my life. Okay. One time was actually at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel when he debated, Hillary Clinton, okay, basically just before the 2016 elections. And then the second time, it was actually at the New York Economics Club when I heard him. Now, let me tell you this. So he gave his first speech in his first term. He gave his first speech, okay, about economics at the New York Economics Club, which is sort of like one of these things, like it's a big thing on Wall Street, okay? And literally, I mean, I as you probably know, Trump at the time certainly was very, very unpopular with Wall Street. Wall Street hates him, okay? Most billionaires hate him, and I'll explain to you that afterwards, what I mean by that. I was literally, like, I was the only person who was prepared to give him a standing ovation. Okay, let me tell you this. I was surrounded by all these people who hate Trump. And then guess what? He gave in his speech. It was just absolutely amazing because he must have recited from memory like 50 numbers, like GDP, debt, and whatever it was. And then he spoke like nothing you might have thought that he would speak based on, the way he speaks on TV or doing his campaign rally and so on and so forth. That, guess what? He got a total standing ovation from everybody in the room. And that was a shocking thing. Now, let me tell you something about Trump, just so that to put things into perspective. Now, I told you I grew up in Taiwan. At the age of 15, my parents put me on an airplane and sent me off to one of the most prestigious boarding schools in America, okay, in Western Massachusetts. And, that was in the early 80s. And let me tell you this, I was practically the only, Asian kid at the whole school. And I barely spoke any English at all, by the way. And, I was there with some of the richest kids in America. I still remember, one of the kids, his father actually owned the Chicago White Sox. And every week, his father would actually, send a helicopter to basically deliver some Chicago-style pizzas, okay, to his son and basically some friends. That's what we're talking about here, okay? Now, I can tell you that at the time in America, in the early 80s, when I was growing up in this prep school, where I was the only Asian kid, guess what? It was, America was ruled and dominated by the WASPs, okay? Now, there's no doubt about that. And I got a first taste of it. I was, there was a lot of racism, whatever. It doesn't really matter. I've always said if I could survive that boarding school, I could survive just about anything. Let me tell you this. As you and I know very well, Donald Trump is everything, but he's not a WASP. Donald Trump comes from a Germanic background. Donald Trump's father was in the business of building low-cost housing in the Bronx. Do you think Donald Trump, any time in his life, was ever invited to the best parties on Park Avenue or the best parties in the Hamptons? Let me tell you, the answer is no. Donald Trump, because let me tell you this, I can tell you something else. Talking about real estate. Not so long ago, actually, I was at a charity event, and I met this Jewish guy who comes from one of the wealthiest families, Jewish families in the West Coast. And his family's in real estate. This guy graduated from Brown University in 1982. And we were just chatting around, that kind of thing. He was like, well, because I was working finance then, we met him. He said, oh, well, I always wanted to work in finance. But when I graduated from Brown in 1982, I was told there were no Jews working at JP Morgan. There were no Jews on Wall Street, period. This is the reason why the Jews went into real estate, because the doors to basically banking was not available to them. Now imagine you're Trump. You're Donald J. Trump. You are, the WASPs did not go into real estate because they thought that was a dirty business. They definitely did not go into a low-cost housing business, believe me. This is why Trump always has this chip on his shoulder, because he was rejected by other white people because he was not a WASP. He came from a real estate family. This is the reason why I've always said, Trump, you have no idea how many people I know who said that they have played golf with Trump at some point in time. Any Joe Mo on Wall Street who basically became a member have actually personally played golf with Trump. You know why? Because Trump has no friends. Okay? He created all these basically clubs in order so that he can find people to play golf with him. Let me tell you something else. When I know a banker, okay, who was a banker at Bank of America, who was the only guy at Bank of America who was invited to Ivanka Trump's wedding, okay, which I think was at the Plaza Hotel in New York, if I remember correctly. He said he got there. He said, except for a few blonde people, which were all the Trump families, everybody else was Hasidic Jews. That's it, okay? Because, again, you have to understand, Trump was always held in contempt by Wall Street, by the billionaires. They looked down on him. And this is the reason why we have to understand, you've got a president who's got a chip on his shoulder. He's very talented. If he comes across as being insecure, he's vain, so on and so forth, it's because, the people of his, whatever, his background, look down on him. And he has had to. So I'm not saying Trump is definitely not a perfect guy. He has a lot of flaws, whatever it is. But he's clearly very talented. And then he's talented also because he's a bit of a chameleon. There are many different faces of Trump. Most Americans have only seen one side of him, but this guy is a complex guy. Okay.
Well, and we're at the top of the hour, and I thank you, David Wu. It's a pleasure to see you. I'm so happy that you're okay. Yesterday, you had to dive out because of an emergency situation. We'll be sending our prayers to you. Everyone, make sure you tune into Sasha's show. It's on right now. He's giving us an update on the wars in Ukraine and the wars in Israel and other wars. It's a really good show. Again, real people with real stories from around the world is what Pod TV is about and what we have tried to keep it about. We are not sponsored and we're not regulated, so we're not told what we can and can't say. So everyone, take care. Be sure to tune in with us every day at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for World Edition. And hopefully we'll keep seeing David Wu and Rick Rosner and Dr. Sharif and Sasha and Mark Lee. I don't know what happened to him, and Nick. But everyone, stay safe. And until we see you again, take care.
Bye.
Bye.